Have you ever felt like no one truly respects you unless they're afraid of losing you? It's one of the harshest truths in human nature. We say we value kindness, but we only respect power. And when power lacks the edge, when it becomes too soft and to some extent too familiar, it loses its grip. Machiavelli understood something few dare to admit out loud. Fear lasts longer than love. And in leadership, fear, but only when used wisely, becomes your strongest shield. But here's the key: it must never become hate. Because once people hate you, they no longer fear the consequences. They start looking for ways to destroy you, no matter the cost. So how do you balance the equation? How do you command fear and respect without becoming the enemy? Let's start with the first illusion you need to break. You see, you've been told to be kind, pleasant, approved by everyone. But that's not all. You've also been taught that people will stay loyal to you if you just treat them right. But here's the truth: kindness, when unguarded, invites betrayal. The more you give without boundaries, the more others start to test you, not because they're evil, but because weakness invites pressure. A smile with no limits becomes a target. A soft voice with no edge becomes background noise. And worse, those you try to please will be the first to turn on you the moment you say no. Because love is fragile. It's emotional, conditional, temporary. But fear, well, fear is remembered. Fear shapes behavior. Fear keeps people from crossing the line, even when they feel like it. However, fear on its own can be dangerous. It must be controlled, calibrated, strategic. This is where Machiavellian wisdom begins. You don't want to be hated. Hatred leads to rebellion. But neither do you want to be overly loved, because that leads to being taken for granted. What you need is fearful respect. Not fear that humiliates, not fear that wounds, but the kind of respect that whispers, "Don't push too far." It's the look in someone's eyes when they know, if they cross you, there will be consequences. Not loud, not chaotic, just decisive. This kind of authority doesn't come from shouting. It comes from knowing when to act and when to stay silent. Let me ask you, how many times have you seen someone too kind get burned by those they helped? How often have you watched a leader collapse under the pressure of trying to be liked? The world punishes softness that has no structure. It tests the limits of kindness until there's nothing left but resentment. But that's just the surface. If you want to lead, you need a spine, not just a smile. You need to create an atmosphere where people don't just appreciate your presence. Rather, they measure it, where they speak carefully, move intentionally, think twice before they lie to your face, because deep down, they know you are fair, but not to be played. However, all this can't work if your balance is not sharp enough. Even Machiavelli warned us about it. He explained that power without boundaries leads to ruin, but so does force without principle. So how do you stay in control? You build two pillars. The first pillar should be law. In this, we look at your principles, your limits, and your structure. The second pillar, on the other hand, is force. Here, we look at your capacity to act swiftly and without hesitation when those principles are violated. If you rely only on law, people test you. If you rely only on force, people fear you, but soon they plot against you. But when you combine both, you create a boundary they feel, even in your silence. And that's where real power lives, not in how loud you are, but in how others adjust around you without needing to be told. However, this method comes at a very high cost. Isolation. Power isolates you. And the stronger your presence becomes, the fewer people will truly stand beside you without envy, fear, or hidden motives. However, Machiavelli explained that this is not a weakness. It's a necessary price. Because to maintain authority, you must free yourself from emotional dependence. You must be willing to stand alone in order to stand firm. That's the first internal shift. But what about the external? How do you keep control when visibility makes you a target? The answer? Mystery. If people can predict you, they can disarm you. If they fully understand you, they can manipulate you, but when you remain unreadable, when your next move is uncertain, they stay cautious. Machiavelli understood the psychology of power better than most. A predictable leader loses respect. An unpredictable one controls the room. This isn't about being erratic. It's about being deliberately unreadable. You don't need to explain everything. In fact, the more you explain, the weaker you seem. People respect what they don't fully understand. They fear what they can't anticipate. So say less, move smart, let silence do the work. Silence is more than the absence of words. It's a psychological weapon. When you pause, others fill the space with their own insecurities. When you withhold your reaction, people start calculating, wondering what you're thinking, guessing where you stand. This is how you create pressure without raising your voice. But pressure must be managed, because too much of it, held too long, leads to something dangerous: hate. And here's where the line gets razor thin. Fear should protect you, not poison the room. When people start to hate you, they stop caring about the consequences. And the moment someone would rather see you fall, even if it costs them everything, you've already lost. So how do you prevent that? You relieve pressure at the right moment. A small gesture, a precise compliment, a calculated show of empathy, not weakness, just awareness. That small feat signals that I see you. I could act, but I choose not to. That choice becomes unforgettable, and it deepens their respect. This is why praise is as powerful as punishment, but only when used wisely. However, this is just one side of the coin. Apart from respect and fear, you will always have some people who just want your position, the rivals, some loud, some hiding in plain sight. But the worst mistake you can make, eliminating them too quickly. Let some exist, but strategically. Let them challenge you, just enough. You might be wondering why. Well, because their failure becomes your silent victory. Their collapse in front of others confirms your strength, without you ever lifting a finger. A public fall, after a fair challenge, sends one clear message to everyone else that this is what happens when you underestimate me, and that message lingers. It's quite interesting, right? But none of this matters if you lack one thing: observation. You must become a master of human behavior. Every small reaction, every shift in tone, every subtle glance. Because those small details, that's where true intention hides. Let others speak freely. Let them believe you're not watching. And when the time comes, use what you know. Surprise is your greatest weapon. The move they never expected is the one they never recover from. But what happens when things go wrong? Because they will. Power always gets tested. Your judgment, your presence, your authority. At some point, you will falter. You will be vulnerable. And this is the ultimate test, because your reaction during crisis will define you more than anything else. If you panic, the mask falls. But if you remain calm, measured, controlled, you rise in respect faster than any speech or show of strength could offer. It's in the chaos that leaders are revealed, and those who lead through silence, through clarity, through calm, even when the world is burning, become indestructible. So here's your final truth: to be respected and feared without being hated. Be measured, not cruel. Be silent, not invisible. Be unpredictable, not unstable. And always, always observe more than you speak.